think this should be working. I don't know. Let's check. It's never simple. Oh, I can see myself, so hopefully you all can hear me. I can just see myself looking worried. It's so funny. That's my normal face. Hi, everybody. Yay. Welcome to you, Little Horus, you. And the Poetry of Battle, as told by Dan Abnett. So yeah, I'm lucky enough. I'm going to be having a chat with old DA about this story. So obviously, I first met. Hello, Erevis. Hello, Nige. Thank you. Thank goodness it's working. So obviously, I met Little Horus in the very first book in the Horus Heresy, Horus Rising, and famously, he's part of the Mournival, of which I was so enamored of the Mournival that Tarek and Ezekiel and Horus and Garviel, that I have my own T-shirt that you can buy. And yeah, obviously, not really having any knowledge. By the time we got to Galaxy in Flames, yeah, everything was up in flames. So Little Horus, as you may have guessed, is a short story about Little Horus, who looked so much like Horus that's why he had his nickname. And so I'm going to have a chat with Dan about this. Very excited. I love talking about the Mournival with Dan. But it's a very, it is a short story. So in my book, it goes from page 277 to 306. So how many is that? 29 pages long. And yeah, I think I was really surprised because, well, firstly, Age of Darkness is really grim dark. Everything started going wrong. It's like post-Brexit vote in the UK, and you're just seeing how the civil war, the fight between Horus and the Emperor, is beginning to affect everybody on the ground. And yeah, it's quite I'd say it's a very depressing. They're all depressing in their own way, but this is very kind of a lo-fi. Yeah, it's a bit of a trudge of all the things going wrong. Hello, Jake Wu. Welcome. But what Dan has done with this short story, I got to dwell, Christian. I got to dwell. And this is one of my favourite ever interactions with the Horus Heresy through the Black Library. And when I read this short story, the way it's written feels like you're within the structure of something more than a short story, almost poem like T.S. Eliot came to mind, and then haikus. And obviously in the Horus Heresy, when Graham McNeill and Dan Abnett and Jim Swallow were getting together to write about the heresy, one of the things that they agreed on was that they were going to explore the four humours of the human condition, which is I think sanguinity, oh gosh, I'm going to forget them all now. Choler for anger, melancholy, and there's one other. So you have that kind of poetic language coming in. And then as well as that, there are some literary mechanics, literary tricks that Dan uses, which there's lots of reflection and repetition, as if you're reading like a war saga or a song, a chorus of a song. Chorus, Little Horus. But yeah, it's just, a lot of the times when I write, if I'm being very self-indulgent, it's holy style over function. But this chapter is really poetic and beautiful, and it works so well. So the way that it brings you into the story, the tone of voice. Let us speak of Little Horus Aximand. His aspect was the half moon, and his disposition, according to the humours, was inclining towards melancholia. This explained, many thought, his prevailing mood of sorrow and inner trouble, though he frequently denied it. The melancholic humour is misunderstood, he said. You think too literally. It has in fact the quality of autumn. It is the spirit of contemplative change, the accelerator of death, the enabler of ends and beginnings. Autumn clears away the world so that a new one may rise. This is my purpose. I am not sad. Of course, once they reattached his face, all he ever really looked was angry. How's about that for the first 15 lines of a short story? And the comparing himself to autumn and seeing himself in that description, it is the spirit of contemplative change, obviously changing the whole worshipping the emperor to worshipping a traitor, the accelerator of death. Well, you accelerated everyone's death on bloody Istvan, didn't you? The enabler of ends and beginnings. So he's given himself this bigger purpose, and he's misunderstood. And I just thought, oh, I loved that so much. And then, the line, this is typical Dan, he eases you in and then smacks you around the head with a... Of course, once they reattached his face, all he ever really looked was angry. I know, Sean! I know. And I'm going to spoil the story, but the way his face comes off, I really loved reading it. I'm not a brutal person, but wow. Wowie zowie. Okay, so quickly while I'm remembering. So in that, he calls himself, he says he's like autumn. And then of course Dan finds a way to... So this is really beautiful. So this page, he compares himself to autumn. And that I just want to read out, this is a section of little Horus talking to Abaddon. I don't know how to pronounce it. Abaddon, you tell me. The mechanism always worked, Axeman pressed, dropping his soft voice to a leaf rustle whisper, making Abaddon bend closer to hear. A leaf rustle whisper, because he sees himself as autumn. So, there's another bit of the book where he's talking to Abaddon, and this is just another example of speech from little Horus. A sound suggestion. Segar Targos is heartwood like us, but he is also a lodge master. Heartwood, like a tree. So the poetry of him being autumn is personified throughout with these references to the whistle of leaves and trees. And I just think that's so clever. I'm just going to stop and read some comments real quick. Jim says, Iron Within next. Everest Kale. I don't even remember that book. I need to go back. Yeah, there are some cracking short stories in here. Nige loves the Iron Within the Last Remembrancer. Heartbreaking. Christian, little Horus had some issues after Istvan 3. I love that Abnett kept that up in this short. Yeah, me too. Little Horus on the beat, says Everest. Jake says, isn't this one where Axeman fights Hibu Khan of the White Scars? Yes! And there's an amazing White Scars reveal in this. Okay, it's Abaddon, a bad one. I think Abaddon is pronounced armless, because the old lead model's arms would always fall off. Fail Baddon if you're trying to be clever. Very good, very good. So this video is entitled The Poetry of Battle. Oh, yes, just one other thing on the autumn tip. The melancholic humour is protean, he said. It possesses the quality of autumn, which is what I just read out at the beginning. So that is where that line first comes up. And then that's completely repeated like 4 pages later. So you're thinking, why is this repeating happening? And the repeating of certain phrases or paragraphs is used to great impact. And yeah, so there's another example where they're talking about where this battle is going to take place. The Mausolithic precinct was regarded as one of the top 3 objectives, along with the primary port and the city of the elders. And at the end of this description, Horus is talking to little Horus. I would be disappointed if we were forced to lose a resource like the Mausolithic precinct. the War Master told little Horus. But I would be more disappointed if we lost this fight. Burn it only if the alternative is losing. Yes, my lord, said Aximand. Immediately afterwards, I would be disappointed if we were forced to lose a resource like the Morsylitic precinct, the War Master told little Horus. The only light in the chamber came from the fire crackling in the great stone bowl. But I would be more disappointed if we lost this fight. Burn it only if the alternative is Aximand. Yes, my lord, said Aximand. Your attention is elsewhere, I think. Lupercal, I'm sorry, for a moment there. So you have a whole section repeated, and it's a dream. There's lots of like dreaming and imagined. There's like a ghost in this chapter, and Horus says, "Oh, little Horus," says the War Master, "you are beginning to speak with the tongue of madness." And just as Aximand realised that he woke. So reading this gives you a sense of deja vu, but it's intentional. The repetition is intentional, which kind of gives it this beautiful poetic pace. The other thing that I really like in this story was learning about the differences in the Lunar Wolves, the sons of Horus, who have what they call the true sun face. So it's kind of like a division in the ranks where if you look more like Horus, you are called like a true sun face. And Horus teases little Horus about, you know, his candidate to put into the new Mournival was a true sun face. I thought that was really interesting. And there's a little bit of description about that. There was it's a Noctua who seems like quite a normal, balanced person that gets invited to the new Mournival. I don't know how that happened. Noctua had that true sun face, but the balance of humours was unusual. There was less of the arrogant, charismatic, and more of the calculated intellectual. I thought that was really... I love that they were saying, yeah, they're all charismatic, arrogant people, but this one was a bit more down to earth. Sean said his face was like a leaf in autumn falling off. The 16th doesn't lose, says Christian. The wolves will take it. The moon wolves will take it. So then you realise there's something spiritual, deep going on. I mean, I always worry, ever since Fulgrim by Graham McNeill, the dream sequences. I mean, any dream sequence in the Heresy is either the warp coming to like, oh, we're coming to get you, or it's foreshadowing. It's never like you'd ever dream about the lottery numbers and then you win in 30k. But there's this little ghost that's following little Horus. So there's a moment where Dan Abnett just gives this sense that there's someone following. Is it spiritual? Is it ghostly? Or is it like when you're paranoid and you're in combat and someone's creeping up on you? Well, of course it's both. But there's beautiful moments, really quiet. The briefing continued. Aximand thought for a moment that someone else had something to say, someone who'd come into the room late to stand at the back of the grouped officers, but there was nobody there. And there are many moments where he's like peeking around corners, and we get lots of little snippets of Horus. So Horus plays what are they playing? Plays Regicide with little Horus. And one lovely thing that I really enjoy is learning that they're into board games. It says the anteroom was furnished. Sorry, I'll take it from the top. The War Master nodded. He moved another carved bone counter across the board between them. Of all his sons, Aximand most enjoyed the practice and discipline of strategy games. The anteroom was furnished with many fine sets, most of them gifts from war leaders or brother Primarchs. I thought that was a really cool detail, that the Primarchs would send each other war games, strategy games. There was Regicide, Chatranj, Caturanga, Go, Hanef Talthal, Exadregs, Mankala, Zaktrikan. It was rare to find a Primarch's homeworld where a skill-honing wargame had not evolved. I really love that, like such nice little flavour So, potentially Games Workshop could go and make, a strategy board game for each of the Primarchs. Um, then there's something coming up about the preference for true sons. Um, and this kind of confused me a bit. Axelmund hesitated. He remembered the conversation with Abaddon, wherein he had not chosen to say that Targos, the captain of the Seventh Company, was not a son, a true son. He was chthonic stock. Axelmund had not chosen to reveal that part of his disinclination. So I'm guessing if someone is chthonic stock, that means that they are in your legion, but they're not one of the genes. They're not a direct gene baby from your Primarch seed. And chthonic could be the planet that they come from. I don't know if I've missed something really vital about that. So I'm hoping someone can tell me this in the chat right now. Christian says, I really like Grail Noctua, an interesting character. Keep an eye out for him. I really like him. I that's good to know he's coming back. I have a mental image of that uncanny presenter existing in 14K and asking him about the ghost. I realise that reference definitely won't make sense to non-Brits. Christian says, I remember those board games. Some of the names come up again. Yeah. We need Historita Jamaldus to tell us about chthonic stock. Chthoniya is the homeworld of the Lunar Wolves. Got it. Of course. Thank you. Helps. I can't remember everything. Marcus, it's their planet culture. Marcus, I hope your counter is low this evening. Yes. Why did I forget that? I don't know if there's a lot of attention given to Horus's homeworld in the first 3 books. I certainly don't mention it, so good to know that. Sean says, brilliant. I can imagine Space Marines quietly playing / studying board games together like they were in prayer. I love that. I think that's great. So anyway, Horus is teasing him for not having true sons. He chose the true sons to come and join the Mournival. So do you suppose, the Warmaster chuckled, it's because you prefer the reassurance of a familiar face? Or is there another face you wish to block out? I was like, ooh, Horus knows the ghosts that are haunting little Horus. So now we come to one of the most beautiful skirmishes, battles that I've ever come across in Heresy. It was absolute delight to read. It was like reading about colours of the rainbow. I'm going to give you some examples of this really beautiful reading. Dry air, cool. A faint hint of salt. The Sea of Enna in the flat rift valley below, like a sheet of glass in a culvert. Along its shore, the teeming city of Tijan collected like flotsam, like multicoloured shingle. On the far side of the immense valley, across the back of the sleeping sea, the block line of the opposite valley wall squared off and velvet black in the dawn light. The sky was violet, shot with stars and occasional moons. To the north, the pre-glow of the rising sun. To the east, the false dawn of the port, on fire since midnight. That was the handiwork of Jared and the 13th Company. It's just such beautiful description. Of course, Dan could probably do that in his sleep. He probably woke up in his sleep, turned over, snored, and that was written. But the clue in this is the multicoloured shingle, because throughout this fight, colours play a really big part in it, in the descriptions as well. One of the really beautiful conceits, this culture that they've gone to kind of kill, have little shield cubes that are kind of self-contained, and sometimes it sounds like they're sometimes lit from within. Entering combat, they engaged individual segmented force shields, light absorbing fog that dimmed the glory of their ritual uniforms, not unicorns, and made them look as if they'd each been enveloped in a hand-cut piece of storm cloud. So that's a lovely description, but you can imagine, they're fighting these combats in these kind of cloudy cocoons. And this comes up a little bit later. Just going to quickly jump into the chat. There's not a lot of attention given to Horus's home planet. We don't see it. Jen, there's a Warhammer animation episode which is 50% Space Wolves playing a board game interspersed with recruits trying not to die. Well, yes, and of course in Prospero Burns, there's a huge Space Wolves. There's lots of visions of a regicide game. Jake says that part of Horus's lore is nearly talked about compared to other Primarchs. Good. Horus spent very little time on Chthoniya. He was found so early. He was the baby. Chthonic also means something along the lines of underground as well. Sacrifices to Chthonic gods were made in pits or caves. Brother, I know you moved that Terminator squad when I wasn't looking. Brother, if you're going to act like this, we'll just paint hello model kitties. Love it, love it, love it. Lovely to catch you so late. Well, I'm going to bed soon. I'm absolutely exhausted. I've been trench crusading. I've been warhammering. I had to, get some laundry from a friend's. Oof, what a night. So we're going to get back into the colours, but one of the really beautiful things is that the Mournival in the first book were kind of, the moon meant a lot, like when they met up, and obviously wolves are entranced by the moon, all of that. So there's a beautiful description. The unique thing about Dwell is that it has 4 moons. He could see 4 of Dwell's moons in the sky, one large, the other 3 not much larger than stars. Because of their relative positions, they were each in a different phase, full, gibbous, half new. Just tiny details like that. And little Horus has a crescent moon on his helmet. There's a lovely detail where Aximand has a sword, double-edged, power active, chthonic blue steel, etched along the fuller. He called it Mourn It All. So the sword's called Mourn It All. And he's trying to get together the Mournival. I thought that was quite fun. Aximand notes that the humans are terrified of him. And he says, they've got transhuman dread. And basically what it means is when you're human, the sight of an Adeptus Astartes was one thing, but the moving fact of one was quite another. The psychologist called it transhuman dread. It froze a man, struck him to the ground, caused his mind to lock up, made him lose control of bladder and bowel. And so that is like, firstly, who knew there were psychologists in the Horus Heresy? And they were probably never out of work. But transhuman dread explained. So hold that in mind that happens. But we're going to go back into the prettiness of this battle. The air was full of shots like neon rain, horizontal. Energy bolts and tracer rounds shone especially brightly in the shade of the vast archway. Mourn It All. Now there is a legendary blade. Remember that name. I will, Christian. So we've got that really beautiful neon rain Blade Runner visual there from Dan. The next section I'm going to read to you is all about blood. Blood, beautiful blood. The mirrored pavements were running with blood. The huge pool draining out from under the fighting mass spread its racing etches out across the etched steel, wider, broader, crimson in the sunlight, scarlet in the shadows, flooding around the bases of the columns, making islands out of plinths and pillars. So we've got the red in there. Then the next section. The assault was so fierce that a brown smoke of aerosolized blood was fuming off the fighting line into the sunlight. It's so visually stunning. Another one. Blood spattered the floor and pooled around crumbled figures and broken weapons. Bloody handprints marked the edges of the fountain bowl where men had struggled to prop themselves up as their last breaths escaped. On the intricately carved walls, jets of blood had left long, pressure-pattern arcs, huge horsetail fans, or fern frond splatters. Some stretched 5 or 6 metres up the sheer walls. I mean, we all know how horrific Dan Abnett can be when he's writing like a war scene. And I just thought he's taken this time to give us art. It's like an exhibit of blood. Um, the art of war. It's just so much poetry. So we're going on, and you remember I told you how they have these special shields, and so when you fight close up, when Axeman gets out Mornitor, his sword, it just smashes through these humans. The cocoons were really effective against the blasters. Um, but there's this beautiful bit. It's not beautiful, it's gross, but it's poetic. Anyway, bear with me. He kicked the other backwards, crunching man and energy cocoon into the anti-hall wall. And then I'm skipping a bit, and it says, the compulsory was pinned there for a second, like an insect specimen on a felt pad, his body shield flickering and blinking as it shorted out. And I just really loved the transformation of, the guy safe in his cocoon being smashed by little Horus and then pinned out like a butterfly. And we've gone through the metamorphosis of like a butterfly, life, birth, life, death, and then being pinned for display in like a few lines. I was just like, and that really resonated with the 4 phases of the moon. We have from beginning to end. And like, this is a short story. This is 33 pages. And all these themes are going through, they're going through. So one of the reasons that this is not a straight route on Dwell is because, unbeknownst to Aximund, other enemies have come down there. So the Iron Hands, there are Iron Hands, specifically Bio Henricus, Medusan's favourite lieutenant. So he basically ambushes little Horus, and he's like, and it says, for a thrilling instant, Axeman wondered if he was at last experiencing transhuman dread for himself. Because Dan has explained the psychological effects of that, as a reader, you're like, oh my goodness. I just thought that was so beautiful and clever. And then we go back into the beauty of battle again. It's all colours, it's all rainbow, this. The silvered black armour of the Iron Hands warrior gleamed like slicked oil in the precinct's weird light. His blade moved like a ribbon of light. Little Horus lurched backwards and crashed into the nearest row of cybernators. Glass sleeves shattered and showers of fragments flew up and caught the light like spring petals. So you've got the seasons coming back in. Power relays shorted out, desiccated bodies tumbled out into the air like bundles of roots and twigs. So there's no need to bring in roots and twigs, There's no need to bring in the spring petals, but because we've begun with this theme of autumn, and this is where I really got the sense of a haiku, the natural themes, and then that we go back into a different colour. So we're coming out of the silvered black. Flickers of energy, dark and unhealthy, were flaring like troubled synapses out from the disrupted area of the morpholytic array. The coloured burst writhed and fired out into the serene, golden layers of the undamaged structure. And then we're whizzing on a bit. So he's finally, fighting back against Henricus. The next blow wounded Henricus in the thigh. This is flipping sublime, this bit. That's not in the book, that's just me commenting. Something silvery, like liquid mercury, sobbed out. Oh, crikey. Like, how do you think to write that? Like, he drove the Medusan war leader back across the carpet of ancient pulverized glass and mummified scraps. His next blow wounded Henricus in the thigh. Something silvery like liquid mercury sobbed out. I mean, intensely amazing writing. So then you think that he's in the clear. You think he's going to get away because he kills Henricus. Not without Henricos going, "This was a trap, you stupid idiot." And Aximon's like, "What trap is it?" And then you find out the White Scars have been hiding. They've been hiding like, you know, the men on the street who dress as statues? They've been dressed up as white statues. The huge white statues of shrouded demigods, bright as snow, that had been kneeling in obeisance around the central great biostasis generator stack were gone. The White Scars kill team rushed them. The 5 killers of the 5th Legion had thrown off the white cloaks they'd used for concealment. They'd used chalk dust or some funereal powder to mask the crimson edges of their armour. The helms were crow skull, the Corvus pattern. It seemed Lev Goshen had been badly mistaken. The White Scars did have the patience to wait. So, yeah, I was shocked, and I thought that was a great way that they introduced this like ambush, but did make me laugh a bit, thinking that they had kind of hidden under a sheet. I really enjoyed that. And also, you know, all the different colours going on, and then the whiteness against all that kind of juxtaposition, and the whiteness being like ghostly, like, you know, ghost sheets, and then them leaping out to ambush. Oof, crikey. Sean said, "Question for Dan, does he enjoy gardening? I'll ask him tomorrow." Christian says, "Transhuman dread is a big thing in Warhammer. The sheer mass and intimidation of Astartes overwhelm most humans in combat. It's one of their best advantages versus mortal troops." Ooh, well, I will make sure I play Tau. I don't even want to play. I don't want to get completely killed in Warhammer games. Hermes, Hades, and Hecate were all chthonic gods. I think the civilization on Chthoniya was subterranean. Marcus says, "I always call it Mornital because everything's always going sideways." Amen, ain't that the truth? Subterranean gangers, says Evander. Dartharus says, "The Lupercalia is a cave where Romulus and Remus were raised by the wolf, whose name I forget. So I think we're going for a generally underground theme." Christian says, "Shadrach Bloody Medusan, leader of the resistance against the Warmaster." Martin says, "Deep diving, wow, you're one of us now. Welcome to the heretics." Welcome to the loyalists. Dartharus, "Only thing missing from that scene is cherry blossoms." Exactly, it's so poetic. I mean, am I deep diving into the world of Warhammer, or am I just doing a literary deconstruction of one of my favourite authors? I mean, I am learning. You know, guys, Ian was right. I should have started with 40k and moved back, because I'm sure I'm missing a lot of like, you know, you folks in the chat are like, "Yes, look out for this sword name, look out for this character." You all know what they've done. I don't. So, yeah, I'm probably going to have to reread all of these after I've read future books. So the way that little Horus's face comes off, and I'm not one for barbarism. You all know that, but this is pretty epic. His third blow caught little Horus vertically at the cheek, in a line that began just over the right eyepiece, where his Mournival mark was displayed. The bonded ceramite of his helm didn't even seem to stop the Medusan weapon. Aximon fell. There was a great deal of blood suddenly, and he couldn't properly account for its source. He saw something on the etched steel floor in front of him. It was the visor and snout section of his own helmet, the entire faceplate. It had been sheared off, peeled cleanly away, as though shaved by an industrial slicer, and it was not empty. It wasn't empty because his face was in it. And the next paragraph starts, "The reattachment left a scar." Oof. Anyway, I won't read the ending of this, but suffice it to say, all those lines, everything comes together at the end. The repetition, the poetry, the ghosts that he's been noticing, the dreams that he's been having, all tied up. But one of the last quotes is, "The melancholic humour is protein," he said. "It possesses the quality of autumn. It is transformative. It makes me the accelerator of death, the enabler of ends and beginnings. I was made to clear away this world ready for renewal, to change the order of things, to cast out the false and enthrone the true. This is my purpose. I am not afraid." That's not the last line. Last line is even more epic. So, I mean, I think if I had to go away and I could only take one story with me. Oh, why do I feel like I'm gonna cry? I'm so stupid. I I think that would always be on my mind because I could take that away like on a desert island and there's poetry within it. It's horrible and grim. And there's lots of stuff like the fighting, which I usually just barrage through, but there's something about the amount of beauty and literary eloquence in 33 pages and just the different subjects and states of mind and dream states, you know, make me have hope for like humans and creativity. I just think the fact that people exist who can, I don't know, harness our language. It's almost like, it's almost like someone's just breathing or eating or having a natural human experience, but they can write like that. It gives me hope. It makes me feel weird things in my heart. And this is for an IP about war games. But also, like, when you think it's such a big universe, there's so many different characters to shine a light on one. And this individual is now so unique with an inner voice and self-perception and what's really going on and being perceived by Horus, who sees what's really going on in 33 pages. Like, it's not normal. It's not normal. In the chat, Christian and Sean both reassuring me, you started in the right place. It gives you a unique perspective learning about it from 30k though. It really does. I wonder if anyone, I'd love to meet a buddy doing the same thing. Could not happen to a better person. Lol, says Marcus. Christian, Aximand hears Loken breathing there in the darkness behind him. His guilty conscience is getting to him. Yeah, and I'd say it's so interesting that Horus calls it out and says, you just want to see my face everywhere because you are seeing Loken's face. And then with the loss of little Horus's face, that is how he moves on. That kind of like solidifies him being a traitor, and then his conscience lets go of the mourning for Loken. But it's so sad that Loken dies so early on. AJ says, I was confused why he would hear Loken instead of Tarek. I thought, AJ, it was because of what Loken represented, which was really loyal and steadfast and trying to check in. And in order to become fully heretical, you have to push away any regard to that person's character. Like, Loken was personified like the stop, wait, what are you doing of the whole Mournival. Maybe that. Christian started on Horus Rising. Chaos started with Heresy as well. The compliance of 6319 is where I want to live forever. Oh, Nick, no worries. We're coming to an end now, but really lovely to be able to discuss this with everybody, and so great to know that so many people have read this short story as well. I'm aware that I'm so tired. I've not been speaking very well, but sometimes I think Dan's words are so overwhelming, then I try and relate what they mean to me and why I think they're so good, and my words are just awful. So I hope you've got some of, I hope you're picking up what I put down. Lovely to see you, Nick, in the chat. I think I probably should wind down and go to bed. There are 37 of us in the chat. So please, if you're new here, please do a like on this video. It helps with the algorithm. If you'd like to just subscribe, that would be fantastic. It's my birthday soon, and I would love to have 10,000 subscribers for my birthday. I don't think that's going to happen, but I can put a wish out there. Martin says, you're such a romantic of poetry of 40k. How would you sum up 40k this far? Well, I haven't done much 40k stuff. I guess my 40k is Eisenhorn, and I love Eisenhorn. I love Ravener. I love Beckwin. I love Dan Abnett. I loved Chris Wraith's crime novel. I've read Demon Breaker. I've read Victoria Hayward's amazing book. How would you sum up 40k this far? Flipping out, how do you sum up 30 years of lore? 30 years of lore. How would I sum it up? Consuming. All consuming, I would sum it up. But also, I mean, I feel like so stupidly lucky. Like, I've fallen. One of my best friends, Ian, was like, get in here and do a YouTube channel. I did what Ian said. People started watching. Then I started asking authors would they come and talk to me. Then they said, yes, we will talk to you. I'm like, and for me, like, I mean, if I could just climb into the heads of all the creators, I think I'd be happy. Like, I'm so happy talking to people who tell me about their muse and their creations. I wonder if there's something wrong with me in that respect, but I just get a lot of joy out of the authors and the human contact and chatting about lovely stuff. Thank you for the compliment, Christian. Steve says, maybe because he knew he'd killed Tarek and the guilt he felt was represented by Loken and potential vengeance on himself. I think so, Steve. I feel like Loken represents... I mean, when you think back to Loken, it's like one lone space marine in the face of like all the rest of his legion coming after him. Spear of the Emperor. Yep, Spear of the Emperor and Gaunt's Ghosts. Oh, those are the next two things. Interceptor City and the book preceding that are the next books we're going to be discussing with Dan. Nice to hang out with you as well, Jake. Nice to see you. Chaos. I have to recommend the Black Legion trilogy once you finish 30k. I mean, only 50 more books to go. Grimdark is the cop-out, but also correct answer, says Waller. Bit bleak, ain't it? That's 40k. Sean says creativity is contagious. I mean, there is humour in a lot of the stories and stuff. I'm going to be talking to another one of my favourites, Jim Swallow. We're going to be talking about Liar's Due, which is basically so cool. It's such an unexpected genre in the Heresy. So I'm excited to talk to Jim about that as well. And I don't know, I have asked to see if Chris will... No, ask Chris about something else. Oh yeah, I have asked if Chris will talk to me about Rebirth. Don't know. These are busy humans, but let's see. Gray. I just reread I Am Slaughter by Dan, and it's a glorious piece of writing. It's a bridging series between Heresy and 40k. Well, probably see you all again when I'm 60 odd, going, oh, I've got onto Slaughter. I Am Slaughter by Dan Abnett. But I also have Dan's own books that I want to read. Anyway, it's really late. Tomorrow is a crazy busy day. So I better get to bed. But thanks so much for joining me. It's always so much fun to talk about these books. I hope you all have a really lovely week. If you're new here, please do the like and subscribe thing. You can also become a Mirror Manga YouTube member. You can also join my Patreon, and I have merch. Ian also has very cool merch, so if you are a fan of Ian, go check out his merch shop. Okay, time for bed, my dear friends. Look after yourselves and each other, and don't let the ghosts come in, especially the Gaunt's ghosts.